A very good evening to you watching UBC TV. Thank you for staying with us up to the hour of 5 minutes past 9 p.m. My name is Sophia Matovo, and it's always a pleasure for us to come to your living rooms to share very important and pertinent health-related conversations. Now, according to research, the estimated incidences of mental illness is massive. That's at about 35% in Uganda. Ugandans people suffer from mental illness, and 15% of them require treatment. Our topic of discussion tonight is mental health, stress and mental illnesses. We are going to take you a lot in depth about this because in one way or another, I believe each one of us has a family member who's been affected or who's really had an issue. And there are certain times, even in our workspace, for us, we think you need to first see somebody strip and run around naked, and we say, Oyo Mulalu. No, it is more than that. It's high time we had better identify. Now, with me in studio, I have an expert to take us through this, and that is Dr. Kenneth Kalani, who is a psychiatrist and a senior medical officer from Ministry of Health. Doctor, a very good evening to you.
Good evening, Sophie.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Thank you for taking time off your busy schedule to come through and accept the invitation to have this conversation. Now, Doctor, I would like to start straight with the usual, I call them the cliche questions.
Yeah.
We use this catchphrase a lot. Some people even think it is funky. Some cannot even be able to identify. I think it's just become part of our conversations, and the key word is stress. Break it down for us. What is stress?
What is stress? Okay, maybe I will start by defining mental health.
Okay.
If you don't mind, because
it's okay.
Yeah, then there I can
dive into
go
stress.
in, yeah,
all right,
to define stress. So mental health, WHO defines mental health as a state of well-being in which an individual is able to know their abilities, cope or deal with the day-to-day stresses of life, make meaningful relationships, work productively and fruitfully, and contribute to his or her society. So you see that definition is quite simple, and it doesn't talk about psychology, the mind, what, and all those things. If you look at the definition, it talks about the things we do on a day-to-day basis. That in order for you to perform, you need mental health. In order for you to handle the stresses of life in your home or at work, you need mental health.
True.
In order for you to work productively and fruitfully, you need mental health. In order for you to know your abilities or know your potential, you need mental health. In order for you to contribute to society or the community, you need mental health. So every day we need
mental health.
And so everybody has mental health. Okay? So mental health is just that the range varies. So we can, mental health, so they say, falls on a spectrum. And on one end we have perfect mental health, and the other side we have poor mental health. Yes. So there are things that swing us in between perfect and poor. But on a day-to-day, as we get up from home and we go to work, as we relate with people, as we work, we strive to be mentally healthy, or to be on this side where there is perfect mental health. Unfortunately, because of certain circumstances, we can find ourselves with poor mental health. And that's where stress comes in.
In the category of poor mental health?
No. Now stress comes in to check us on this spectrum.
Which side do you go?
Yes. So once stress is much, you tend towards
the poor mental health.
Once you can deal with your stresses, or stresses are less, you tend towards good perfect mental health. So how would you define stress? Back to your to your question. I like to make it very simple, that we really all understand the meaning of stress. So I will say, this is you, Sophie. And as Sophie, you a wife, for example. You a daughter, for example. You an employer, for example.
A mother.
You a mother, for example. You have a school, for example. You have a job here, you know. You have to go back to school and educate. You have extended families. You have friends. And as an individual, Sophie, you have so many demands around
you.
Sometimes we do not have the resources to meet all the demands we have. And by resources, I mean can be physical resource, it can be psychological resource, it can be financial resources. Sometimes you find that you're struggling to meet all these demands that you have around you. Now that imbalance between the demands on you and the resources you have to meet the demands is what is called stress. So once you're stretched, you're trying to meet these demands, you say you are
stressed.
And that is the definition, the simple, very simple definition of stress. But with us, you realize that everyone has some degree of stress.
Of stress.
Yeah.
Okay.
In all aspects and spheres where we do. So depending on the magnitude of stress, depending on how we deal with the stress, we can find ourselves on perfect mental health or tending towards, or poor mental health the other side. And how do we know that you're in state of poor mental health? There are certain things that change that you get to know. You know, sleep starts to get affected, start to get worried so much all the time, your mood changes, you know, appetite goes, your social activity also goes, you prefer to stay alone, your physical activity goes down. There may be use of alcohol or even increased use of alcohol if that's what as a way of coping or dealing with these things. So those are telltale signs that, hey, someone is tending towards poor mental health on the other side. Whereas people who are okay here, they're engaging properly, they're working, they're sleeping, they're able to work productively and fruitfully, they're even happier. This is towards the perfect mental health.
Wow.
I've tried to make it in...
No, you've really broken it down very clear in a simple layman's language. Now, at your level, what can you say are the major areas here in Uganda as far as mental health is concerned? I believe, of course, there are many different types, but there must be some major ones that have seeped in quite a lot. And given that now it is something that every household is complaining about, at least most of the households will complain about it.
Okay. So I think I'll still focus with the mental illnesses that are linked to stress and these social issues here that we face on a day-to-day basis. And I'll go back to that spectrum. Now, assuming the stress is too much or is overwhelming, you know, so you are towards poor mental health. Now, if you stay in a state of poor mental health for a long time without coming back to this state, you will start to develop mental illness. Okay, so what is mental illness? So mental illness is a disease of the brain, because it has the word mental. That means it affects the brain. That's like any other illness that affects the liver, that affects the kidney, that affects the heart. Mental illness affects the brain. Because it affects the brain, it will affect the way we think, it will affect the way we behave, and it will affect the way we think or feel. You get? Because it affects the brain, it will affect the way we think, our thoughts, it will affect the way we behave, the way we interact with people, it will also affect the way we feel. Okay, the way you feel about certain things. And so these are the domains of mental illness. So it is a disease of the brain that affects the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we behave. And it causes significant suffering to the sufferer or to the person with it. The persons with mental illnesses suffer so much internally, because the illness will affect their thought patterns, may affect the way they interpret things or the way they look at you, for example. May affect the way they feel about things. It may affect the way they think about things. And that will ultimately be seen in the way they behave and interact with people. So the commonest ones that are linked with these stresses and social issues of day-to-day living is anxiety and depression, alcohol and substance use.
Okay.
I want us to understand those three, because oftentimes mental illnesses and mental health issues and mental health problems have been associated to the severe mental illnesses. So every time you talk about mental illness, people will look at that patient who is hoarding rubbish on the streets, that patient who is walking naked. That patient who has, who is shouting and maybe threatening violence for those at that problem. Those ones who are talking too much. That is the way people look at mental illness, and that's not a good way of looking at it, because that's not the fact. The fact is that the people with that kind of severe mental illness are the minority. In fact, estimates put it at 0 to 1%. The majority of mental illnesses are anxiety, depression, alcohol, substance use. The statistics estimate up to 25% in a lifetime. This is 1 in 4. So this means it's so common. And where do people with anxiety, depression, and alcohol use problems stay? Where do we find them? Find them in our workplaces, like here, you know. We find them in schools, for learners. We find them in our communities. Most of them do not go to the health care or anywhere to seek help. Because one, many people do not know, or they are not even aware that these symptoms they're experiencing is probably mental illness. But two, there are also many alternative explanations to the way people feel and think. You know, things might not be working out well for you. It's easier to maybe believe that it's some witchcraft or some divine things coming in. And so there are so many alternative explanations related to mental ill health. And as such, the treatment, the care that they actually need is not gotten. So if there are any 3 things that I want the listeners here to know, that the commonest mental illnesses are those 3. Anxiety,
Doctor, I'm going to beg you to break them down one by one, because, and you know, when you break it down, I beg for the viewer to pay attention. Maybe they can be able to identify. If you have a friend, and basing on how Dr. Kalani is going to break it down, and you realize that I've talked about anxiety, this person needs help, you don't have to wait to the point when you're referred, you know, to a health facility for support and assistance. Doctors start breaking them down. Take us into the detail of anxiety.
So anxiety, as the word says, it's a state of being uneasy, you know. Anxiety is a normal feeling, you know. For example, when you have an exam tomorrow, you have an interview tomorrow, you will be anxious a bit. When you're called to, when you've seen a life-threatening situation, you're going to be anxious. So it comes with a bit of feeling uneasiness, okay? And sometimes you may get certain symptoms as well, like the heart beats quickly, you sweat in your palms, you're breathing in and you feel like air is not going in. When does anxiety become a problem? It becomes a problem when those symptoms are prolonged, okay? And they are there all the time without even a clear trigger, and then they affect you in your day-to-day life or performance. So people with anxiety, there are different categories of anxiety that I won't go into. But I just want to pick out the cardinal symptoms of anxiety. One of them is worry. Okay? So people with anxiety worry excessively. Okay? So they worry about day-to-day problems of everyday living. You know, you worry about, if I go to bed, I'll not wake up. You worry about this, and all the time your mind is preoccupied with worry. You know, worry comes with anticipation, comes with anxiety, comes with a feeling on the edge, like something is going to happen the next minute, and you even don't know what's going to happen. And of course, those feelings sometimes come with bodily symptoms as well. So you may find your abdomen is tensed all the time. You may find that you're having a heart rate, or your heart starts to beat quickly. Sometimes you may get feelings of numbness in certain parts of your body. Some of them may describe headaches that are not very clear. You know, today here the body pains and migratory body pains that the usual physician may not explain. Sometimes they even feel there is a lump in the throat, you know, because of the anxiety, the other symptoms that are associated with the worries that people have all the time. Sometimes they worry about catastrophic outcomes, that the worst is possibly going to come, even when there is no clear evidence that, you know, that situation is going to be there. So now that worry affects how they operate. You know, when you're in a state of worry all the time, you will fear to indulge in certain things. Okay, your performance also will be down, because all the time you're worried, you do not have time to focus and concentrate and do something that is constructive. And can have other physical consequences. And mental illnesses, for example, anxieties, are linked with physical illnesses as well. You know, they say when you're in a state of worry for a long time and in that anxious mood for a long time, the body releases certain hormones that are supposed to protect you or go through that. I remember, as I say, that anxiety is a normal reaction, but if it goes on for a long time, the body also releases those hormones. And some of those hormones can affect sugar regulation, and you start to have symptoms of hyperglycemia, that's high blood sugar. Some people go on to actually develop diabetes. This is the link between worry, anxiety, stress, and this. So sometimes it can also affect the way the lipids are regulated. You know, the body, we have small fats. You know, sometimes they can be, because of these hormones that are produced during a state of anxiety, constant anxiety, they can be deposited on the blood vessels. They narrow the blood vessels. So once they do that, they can cause pressure, and people get high blood pressure. That can happen to the heart also, is linked to heart attacks, and so many other physical problems. So that is the state of anxiety. Anxiety also comes with fear. Okay, excessive fear. Even a small thing, what normally people would consider as something that shouldn't be worry or, you know, cause fear to someone, they can get people fear about it, and fear usually comes with panic attacks. Yes, a panic attack is an overwhelming state of fear, you know, that comes with the excessive fear and bodily reactions. So how does the bodily reaction come? So all of a sudden, there's this fear that comes and consumes me all of a sudden, and then my heart starts to race very fast. Okay, then I feel tense in my stomach. They call them butterflies. Some patient describes to me that, doctor, I feel like a stone has been put on my chest and I can't breathe.
That
so even when, I feel chest tightness. Even when they are breathing, they open up their chest. I cannot breathe. So they are breathing very fast, but despite that, they feel like air is not getting in their lungs. Comes with a bit of shaking or tremors, excessive sweat on the palms and even the body. So these are the bodily symptoms. Now the interpretation of the bodily symptoms, the mind will go and say, oh, what is happening to me because of that anxiety? And then the mind will quickly interpret, I'm going to die the next minute. I'm having a heart attack, maybe I have a problem with my heart, if I have a problem with my lungs, I'm going to die. So this will bring them to hospital and anywhere, so they are panicking, doctor, I'm dying. Things are happening to me. So many times I'll share my story when I used to be a general practitioner before I practiced, before I specialized for psychiatry. Every night I would find a middle-aged man or lady coming in with those symptoms. They come in, I'm having a heart attack, I'm having a heart attack, I'm having a heart attack. And it's a panic attack. Usually related to some of the situations or difficulties that that they are facing or that's challenging them. And sometimes they are wrongly diagnosed in some circumstances, and put on medication for diabetes, for hypertension. Yeah, because usually at that state the pressure will be up a bit. So a very ambitious clinician will start them directly on
that medication,
antihypertensive. Wow. Maybe sometimes they can check the heart function and find some abnormality, start them on medication for that as well. Wow. And yet the actual issue is anxiety. So anxiety is very debilitating. One time a patient told me, so I asked him, so how are you doing? So you know, they share this story And they described the feeling that have you ever, gone for an interview of a job you really want? You know how you feel in the night. That is how I've been feeling for the rest of the day, for the rest of the year, every day.
Oh, no.
So it's a feeling of being tense. So it destabilizes you. You cannot work. You cannot do anything. You feel like something bad is going to happen. The feeling of impending doom, so they say. And that is anxiety. Very common. But most of us don't know it either 100. And because in certain circumstances, anxiety can be linked to certain items. And we call that phobias as well. There are certain people fear animals, certain people fear heights. Some people are not comfortable with social interactions or social situations.
Crowds.
Yeah, and all that will cause fear. And what will they do? They will start to fear those circumstances and stay away. And so that means if they stay away, they are not even utilizing their potential, because those circumstances are no-go zone areas for them. It makes them feel very uncomfortable and uneasy because they don't like the feeling.
Now, doctor, there is one area amongst them, the alcohol and substance abuse seems to be outstanding during this particular period of time. Why does it turn out that way? Because it has led to a lot of going on the poor side of mental health. Why has it turned out that way around this period of time? Was it something that was there before and we're just noticing it now? Or is it something that has just cropped up because of this Web 2 generation that we have?
Well, traditionally, alcohol has been used so much in Uganda, and that that it's a part and parcel of our culture. Yeah. In any part of the country, you will find there is a name for a drink. Where I come from Tororo, and people there enjoy ajono, traditional brew, But ajono is alcoholic, has alcohol. You cannot have a function without alcohol, and they call it alcohol, and they call it a function. So traditionally, Uganda has consumed alcohol. It has been there for a very long time, by the way. Why is it piquing interest now? Of course, over time, there have been very many types of alcohol and modifications of these types of alcohol that are made. From those local brews, we can estimate, we don't know the percentages, but we can estimate the percentage of those local brews that are made. But we also have these manufactured, alcohols as well. And you know that in the past, before even they burnt the sachets, we had so many brands of sachets. They were cheap, 100, and accessible, 100 shillings, 200 shillings. Now you have the plastic bottle, but it's still quite cheap, And so everyone is making, there's so many companies that make this. So asking me why, I think availability contributes to this. And we have a predominantly young population as a country. Now, alcohol, if it gets on a growing brain, it can cause more damages, And that's why we have an alcohol policy. We are proposing that the legal drinking age be pushed to 21.
Okay.
Because before the age of 21, the brain is still developing. So if alcohol gets in a developing brain, it's harder to treat them in that circumstance, because the addiction comes in early, if I may put it that way. So there are so many types of alcohol, so many brands. But that said, the alcohol industry also is aggressive in terms of marketing and sponsorship, and these marketing schemes and strategies usually target young people. So young people in schools, they make very beautiful adverts, and they think it's cool, as a young person, as an adolescent. They're growing up in a state of identity crisis. They're trying to relate, to identify themselves. And so they want to relate to cool things. Look at cool adverts. People are, dancing at night, drinking Castle Light, they're doing this, they're taking all sorts of brands and so on and so forth. That too kind of lures young people to take this. And on top of that, the stresses, these anxieties and depression that I've talked about are also increasing. There's a lot of tension, socioeconomic tensions in the country.
True.
Things are changing, you know. The population is growing up, is expanding, yet the resources are more of the same. And so the struggle to first survive is real, because you first survive and then you thrive. Okay? So the struggle to survive is real. So in our struggle to survive, sometimes people get really, really stressed in that struggle to survive. And sometimes alcohol comes in as medicine, as a quick fix.
Yeah,
You
right.
know?
What is quick? Yeah.
So they come in as a quick fix, so they end up to numb their psychological pain and stresses. And in so doing, we can end up with another problem, that is alcohol and substance use. You see, so these things affect people, and in these circumstances, we as a country, we are, I would say, we are in a form of transition. You know, we are balancing between traditional and modern. You know, we are in that transition. To that, even the modern day parent doesn't know exactly how to parent a child. We are a bit confused, you know, like because the way I was raised is very different from the way you raise your child.
Yeah, true.
You know, with us we're raised by community. I was a community child.
Yes, we were community children, by the way.
You're hungry, you'll go and feed in the neighborhood. You've done something wrong, the neighbor will pick you up, you know, say, spank you and discipline you. You know, but nowadays we are becoming more and more close. So the social networks are breaking. And because of this struggle here to survive, parents are unavailable. You know, one parent alone, our mothers were full-time mothers in those days, because the father could go and work and fend. And so we had values given to us as children. We had the mother's love, and we were even gagging of mother's love, because our mothers were on us all the time, you know, and we did not lack anything like that. The children nowadays are growing up with a void, the absence, because we are struggling to look for money, get things made. You have to wake up in the morning. To wake up in the morning, the father wakes up, the mother wakes up in the morning.
Out of the house.
We come back in the evening, we leave our children to the nannies and the screens and the TVs.
And the gadgets.
And the gadgets. And you know, that even causes a lot of confusion, because the gadgets show first world content, because most of the content they watch in those gadgets and TV shows are first world. And so the child is busy learning first world content to be applied in a third world country. That is going to cause conflicts in their head and serious confusion. And ultimately, the child is growing up with a void. You know, they probably feel unloved, and the theories of alcohol use also that is tagged to one of that. That in our brains as we develop, there is nothing that can replace a mother or father's love or parents' love or caretaker. So if someone grows up without that, they look for it. And so once they taste alcohol or substances, these things cause happiness. Some weird strange of happiness, they call it euphoria, some false sense of extreme well-being. So the child will wonder, wow, I've never felt like this in my life. So it's easy for them to get hooked up in that manner.
Wow, that's
so
very worrying.
Alcohol and substances are burdensome to the country, and they are linked with all the other mental illnesses as well. You know that the burden goes just beyond the individual or the child, but it affects the family, the people taking care of the child, you know, because or even because I mean you have to take care of them. Yeah,
and it's expensive.
It's very expensive to provide rehabilitation. Now those are direct costs because you have to treat them. And how about the costs of premature deaths related to alcohol harms and substances harms? What about the cost of untapped potential? This child would have studied and been a doctor, engineer, lawyer, and contributed to the society or country. But because of these substances, their dreams have been shattered.
True.
And that is a loss to the country. And these are indirect costs we do not see. For a family person, let me take the picture of a spouse or a man who who takes alcohols daily. You know, we have responsibilities as fathers or mothers. We have to take care of our children, take them to good schools, be there for them, buy food for them, fend for them. But people who are addicted to alcohol do not do all those things. And those are costs, all those are losses.
Their
'Cause
priority
yes,
is alcohol.
as alcohol, first before anything else, or substances. So what does that mean? That means that the children will not go to the good schools that you would have wanted to take them. They will not have the good diet. Maybe you'll grow up as stunted children. There's domestic violence as well.
Yes.
All these are impacts. So once we look at the impact and burden of alcohol, it's better they look at it as direct and indirect costs as well. Because sometimes they argue that it brings in a bit of revenue here. But if you look at the illnesses, and in this country, we take care of, government takes care of people with chronic illnesses. Health service is free, you know,
Okay.
but not free.
That is a good word.
Yeah,
Free,
so,
but not
yeah,
free.
so it costs the government. We spend a lot of money in taking care of the health effects related to alcohol. In Butavika alone, addiction, average length of stay is 90 days.
That is
You're
close to 3
feeding,
months.
yes, they feed you, they do all this, the costs that are towards the government.
Okay. At what
So,
stage
yeah.
at what stage does one need medical attention for any of the conditions that you've talked about?
So I'm not talking
Does it get worse to get, okay, you said you've not yet talked about,
depression.
oh, depression, doctor,
Yeah.
yes, sorry.
Yeah, so depression is characterized with extreme sadness. Yeah, so we use that term usually loosely to mean, oh, I'm depressed, but it can mean like you have a sad mood. But you know, moods vary. As I told you the other spectrum, that I wake up feeling sad because something bad has happened to me, but I bounce back at the end of the day. So there you have a sad mood. You're not depressed, maybe you have a depressed mood for the day, but you do not have depression, the illness. The depression, the illness, is a form of mental illness, a disorder that is characterized by extreme sadness, extreme or excessive sadness, and loss of interest in things that used to give you pleasure. So people who are depressed are sad most of the time. Sometimes they sit and cry even without clear reasons. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And they lose interest in things. I don't know what your hobbies are, what you like doing, the things you do that makes
Traveling.
you happy.
I love traveling a lot.
So even if they gave you a ticket to travel, you'll turn it down. You're like, I don't like that anymore. People love watching football, playing football.
Watching movies.
Nothing interests you
anymore.
So people with depression get feelings of worthlessness, you know, feel worthlessness. Sometimes even question the reason for living, and sometimes even they think of ending their lives as a solution. Unfortunately, some of them go on to end their lives. People with depression lose concentration. You know, they cannot concentrate to complete a task. And at some point, they struggle. They wake up in the morning, they struggle. They feel fatigued all the time. And tell you, doctor, I go to bed, and when I wake up, I'm tired.
And yet you're
10 in the
supposed to have
morning,
rested.
I'm tired. They slept
Oh,
the whole
dear.
night. I'm tired. So you have trouble sleeping. You have trouble with appetite as well. So that's depression. And usually, when those symptoms last for a long time, more than 2 weeks, you can say someone has depression. It's important to note that these day-to-day stresses, and I shared with you that the domains of stresses, or the things that stresses cause, the changes, how to know that someone is stressed, they're the same things that happen to someone who is depressed or who is anxious or has anxiety. But the difference is that for anxiety and depression, the symptoms are prolonged and consistent, and they affect their day-to-day lives. For example, if I lose appetite for 2 days, if I'm feeling sad for 2 days, and then the next day I bounce back because of something that has happened to me, and I bounce back and I'm okay. We don't say that you're depressed. We say, okay, I had a mental health issue. Maybe I was sad. I was reacting to something bad that has happened to me. Then you bounce back and you cope. But sometimes you stay in that circumstance for a long time. So once you note that these things or symptoms are prolonged for a long time, that's when you can think that someone has a mental health problem. Or
Then at what stage are they recommended to the health facility? Because I've heard people complain and say, I don't want to take my patient to maybe like a rehab or so, that what they do, the medications they give them actually do weaken them. That's what they say. Is it a myth or a fact? That the medicines do weaken them and they end up just being there like a vegetable,
Yeah.
and they cannot do much, they're helpless.
Yeah.
Are the medications used when somebody has tended towards the stage of violence, or is it a form of treatment or therapy to kind of like calm down somebody, because some of them even have nerve issues?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are stages of treatment, but again, to note all these things, you realize that you'll need to go to a healthcare worker,
True.
actually make a diagnosis, you know. But even in that diagnosis of maybe you have depression or anxiety, there are levels of severity, you know. So there are those that are very severe, and there are those that are mild and even moderate, you know. So depending on the level you're at, and sometimes the discussion you have with the physician or the doctor seeing you, they will determine a treatment package. So treatment for most of the mental illnesses are individualized. There is no one size fits all for the patient, because sometimes I may have a stress and my stressor is the spouse, for example, or this and that, and we realize that in order for us to treat this person holistically, we need to engage the family as well. So we shall have family therapy on top of just having therapy with you.
Oh, that's
Yeah, so treatment is individualized, and again, this comes with interaction with the doctor that is seeing you. So that way, one, they can grade the level of your illness, and then two, they can come up with a proper treatment plan that suits you. So it's not like malaria, where it tests positive and then I go and take 4 pills of Coartem and that's it. Then I go and sit home because that's standard. No, it's not like that. Treatment and management is individualized. Yes.
Wow.
So, and there are forms of treatment. One of which is psychotherapy, which is form of talk therapy or talk treatment, in the belief that, you know, our thinking, our thoughts affect the way we behave and the way we feel. So sometimes if you have a negative thought about something, it will affect the way you behave. For example, if you're anxious because you fear that if I go there, I will get anxious. You know, so that is a thought that is affecting your behavior. So your behavior will be avoiding those things. So in the talk therapy, we try and tune some of those unhelpful ways of thinking that affects your behavior and your feelings this side. So we try to shape those unhelpful ways of thinking and replace them with good ways of thinking, that you start to look at the world differently and meets the situation that you're in. That is called psychotherapy or some form of treatment like that. So that sometimes is added with medication, again depending on the severity. Okay, so some people with depression can be so severe that they even hear voices or people talking to them and they do not see them. People telling them you're bad, you're not worth it, you are useless in this world,
Oh dear.
you cannot make it, you're better off dead, and so, but they hear real voices telling them. That kind of person has severe depression that even if you talk, they will not listen to you. So you first have to give them medication to fix that. So once that is fixed, then you start the talk therapy as well to augment with the treatment. Yeah, and then of course we have to have that social aspect as well of treatment, that man is not an island. We interact with society, and sometimes society is the cause of stress, but also we need to interact with them constructively in order to remain productive and fruitful. And so we look at that aspect as well. So in conclusion, the treatment of mental illness follows biological medicine, psychological talking, and even social aspects of
That
it
is
in the form
interesting.
of the treatment.
What tips do you have? You know, because with the world and where we are going, there are certain things where you'd say we've gone digital in terms of how we are living.
Yeah.
We easily access information. We easily believe whatever we see. And sometimes there are lack of filters to be able to tell whether this is fake information or whether this is true. What are some of the tips that you can, as an expert in this particular field and area, have got to tell people on how to stay safe and to avoid, to be on the good side of mental health? How do we go about it?
Well, I think technology has both good and
bad,
and bad side. And thank God, you know, technology, we can do so many things, you know. nowadays without even having to move. I would have made this show at home.
Zoom.
On Zoom, yeah, thanks to technology. It has also made our life easy. I mean, information is very important, you know. We can reach out to so many people through Zoom, and that's a way of raising awareness, you know, using technology, you know. It has a lot of advantages, but in the advantages, there are also some disadvantages as well, yeah. That we cannot replace social interactions. You've seen those memes on social media, that I have 1 million likes on YouTube or on TikTok, but you go back home to stay alone and you actually don't have a friend. Yeah, this
It is true.
yeah, this contributes. So we are so social on
the
social
gadgets,
media,
yes.
and yet alone
In real life.
in real life. So it's breaking the traditional social interaction. Nothing can replace that. And with us at Mental Health, we bank so much on social support. You know, maybe I'll just talk about the importance of social support. That everybody needs somebody to talk to.
True.
At some point, when you have something bothering you and you share it, you feel the burden is out. But also it helps you appraise the situation. It also helps you come up with a solution, you know, once you share. But it's also rewarding to help. Did you know? You help someone.
Yes,
like when you're interacting and you give help, you also feel good.
Yeah, you feel
Yeah,
good.
you feel good. So all these things are being cut off, and people are battling with their problems alone, but smiling on social media. So it's breaking social networks and interaction, which is not good, and that can potentially propagate mental ill health or mental health problems as well. So, but again, people are accessing all sorts of things. You know, now we have a new issue called gaming disorder, which has made it to the international classification. So people game. This gaming, gambling, is also a disorder, and can be online or offline. That people get addicted to it, if I may use that word. That they cannot do without it. So they sacrifice all their hobbies, sacrifice all their work with preference for
Gaming.
gambling. That is also a challenge that is coming up. Cyberbullying. People bully a lot. You know, people get information, they bully, they body shame, they do all sorts of things with that. So all these things can cause consequences. And then we also do not, for the children, it's difficult to regulate the content that they see. Children learn by observation. And sometimes the content they pick from there is not of their age, or is potentially, you can see violent themes and you see your child acting violently. And these things affect their psychological development and makeup. So it's important that we learn to put filters to some
most
of these things. It's
yes.
very good. Technology is good, and it's the way to go. We must embrace it and use it the right way, and not allow it to use us in the way it wants. For me, that's a comment I would make in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doctor, it's just a few minutes left. I'd like to request
time runs.
what, yes, because I believe the young people are on holiday, and if any of them is watching or the parents are watching, what are the key messages that you would like to use to sum up in like about 3 or 4 minutes for the viewer who is watching you right now?
Yeah. So one, I would start to say that mental illness is common. Mental illness is not that person moving around the streets naked.
Yeah.
That is severe mental illness. Those kinds of people are very few. Mental illness is a depression, anxiety, and so on. And it's common. It's everyone's, you and I and everyone. So let's look out for each other. Okay. Let's not stigmatize, because as you see, mental illness is common. Let's support. I always say that for as long as you have a brain, you're not protected, you can have a mental illness. So let's treat these people with dignity. Let's support each other and look out for each other. And some of the tips that we can use to stay mentally healthy, I remember I started by defining what mental health is. Then I talked about stress. Then I talked about the link between stress and mental health and mental illnesses. We are in a situation where stresses are inevitable, you know, and as we go on, as the advent of modernization comes in, stresses are bound to increase.
Yeah,
So we ought to know how to build resilience, to know how to handle these things, that regardless of the circumstances, we need to remain productive, we need to remain fruitful, we need to contribute to our societies and know our potential. So how can we do that? One is by building social networks. Sharing is caring. Any problem you have, find a partner or someone that you can share with. You know, that is very important because it helps you take off your day. Two is learning to draw boundaries as well. We are a very sociable country. We have extended families. Sometimes they want you to do so much that you cannot. Learn to say no to certain things because you know your limits, because you break in trying to
impress them.
Impress and move, and just know your limit. But also that doesn't mean you fold your hand and not help. But build your social networks, help others because you'll also be helped in return. Okay, be deliberate and do something you enjoy for yourself. And this particularly goes for parents. Sometimes we think of our children so much and we work day in, day night and forget about ourselves. Find time, do something you enjoy. Every time you do something that you enjoy, happy hormones are produced, and these happy hormones protect you from anxiety, depression, and all these mental health problems. So purpose and be deliberate to do some of those things that you enjoy. Sometimes when things are tough like this, you can even note down, or journaling is also a good skill. You know, you write down the good things that happen. Then the event when you notice negativity around you, you can open up and say, okay, there's this bad time, but these good things have also happened to me in the past. Practice positive self-talk. Where in the circumstances where things are not going on well, get something good to talk about. Like you can look around, there's always something good that you know you can talk about. Celebrate achievements. All these things are good skills that you know will build up your will make you happy and increase your happy hormones. So these are some of the skills that we can use in order to stay mentally healthy. But above all, we just support each other, like be each other's keeper, because these are tough times, you know, and the stresses are bound to increase. And services are available. Mental health services are not available everywhere. Our regional referral hospitals have mental health units. But even the general doctors beginning to identify, go to a health facility, tell them you're not feeling okay, tell them you're feeling sad, tell them you're feeling anxious, and they will find help for you. And do not sit there alone with that anxiety or sad feeling that you're feeling, because the help is actually there. Let's normalize the aspect of mental health, you know, because no one is protected. Let's normalize talking about mental health. Let's break the stigma. Being with mental illness is not being weak, no. You know, but it's being ill. As I told you, that's the illness of the brain, just like I have illness of the leg, of the brain, or anywhere else. So let's take up these services, and even coming to Butabika. Butabika is a very wonderful place, you know, where they can treat. There are very many services that are in Butabika, not only for treating those people. And all those are myths surrounding them. I've heard that sometimes they put you in a machine that bangs you. All those are myths that surround. But take time and visit the hospital as well. You know, many things happen from there, but above all else, people get treated from those place.
Facilities.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Kalani, thank you so much. I believe you'll find time to still come back one of the days here on Your Health Chat, and you'll be able to take us more into this talk, because it is something that we have to rally. Many young people are closing in off their parents, and the parents are also comfortable for as long as you've given the child a gadget. Why care? But doctor has clearly put it out. We need to get back to the traditional way of living, that is building the social networks. It is quite strange that we can sit in the same space, and what we are doing, as opposed to me having a conversation with doctor, we are busy WhatsApping each other, you know, and we are busy creating bubbles around ourselves. Let's look out for each other, whether in your workspace, whether at home, and be able to identify some of the symptoms he has clearly highlighted, so that we can have the support system for each other. Well, that is all we had for you tonight. It's just about 4 minutes to the top of the hour. The 10 o'clock news will be coming your way shortly with Lauren Kazimoto. Good night from me and Dr. Kalani.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
And in talking news, MTN has improved on their daily voice bundles. You can now call across all networks for the same price.